All right. Good evening, afternoon. How's it going, sir?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Been pretty hectic. Accidentally scheduled today's stream for a week today because I wasn't paying attention to my calendar. But I got that fixed, so I hope it doesn't screw up everyone else who are looking for the stream. It's here. We're live. Looks like we're coming through good. Uh, yeah, we got an interesting one today. So
I think so. I think this is going to be an interesting script to talk about.
yeah, it's got. I'm not familiar with the writer, but uh, it did some interesting placements on there. So if the chat that's listening gives us a thumbs up that the audio is coming through nice and good and nice and balanced, we will get underway. Um, but yeah, I've got a pretty busy week ahead, so I'm happy to kind of like take take a couple hours tonight to sit back, relax, and talk with you about this script. So looks like there we go. Yeah, looks like everything is all good on the audio side. So let's get this show started. Welcome to Scripts on Saturdays, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs discussing scripts both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV and movie-going audience, behind the scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I am your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me this week, back again, is Raoul. So happy to have you back again. You have a good knack of and taste for picking some scripts to read, sir. Because uh, what was it earlier this year? You sent me an email and you're like, "Hey, script doctor, these scripts interested me, and I really want to talk about them." I'm like, "Okay, you're down." And this one here, I can totally understand the interest. So we're going to talk a little bit about today's script called Skin. It's written by Matisse Haddad. This placed in the 22nd place on the 2024 blacklist with 17 votes. The log line for this script goes as follows. A dermatologist's obsession with youth and perfection drives her to create a revolutionary serum, but her pursuit of beauty spirals into a chilling cycle of murder and betrayal, blurring the line between ambition and madness. Raoul, please share with us the synopsis for Skin.
All right. So let's see. Synopsis is when famed Beverly Hills dermatologist Amelia Williams' status begins to slip as she ages, she makes a revolutionary discovery that allows her to completely revitalize her appearance and maintain her lifestyle. It just requires a bit of murder every now and then.
Yes,
Just a little bit of murder.
just a little bit of murder. Like, not a lot, just enough. A dash of murder, a pound of
I don't, yeah, if you
confidence.
read the rest of the script, I don't know if a little murder, I don't know. A little murder?
It's gradual. We can put it that way. So, yeah, Raul, share with us your first impressions of Skin.
Yeah, so I mean, it was definitely interesting, and like you said, I sent you an email with all the scripts that I kind of wanted to read. It just goes to show you if you're interested in writing, sometimes the log line or just a synopsis or something that might be really interesting and catch the reader's eye to want to look at a script is really important because that's all I had to go off of with these scripts was just the log line and not even the synopsis because you usually write those later. It's literally just the log lines that I got to look at, and some of them just jumped out to me. And so far this year, I've covered what monsters, now murder, and some kind of darker scripts and stuff. So it's it just goes to show you that if you have an interesting concept, it can catch people. Now, whether it delivers or not is a different story. This one. It hooked me from the beginning because I'm not going to lie. One of the first impressions that I got, really reading this script was I thought the pacing was actually really good.
Mm-hmm.
From the beginning, couple of pages of the script, it sort of moves through. It gives you a good idea of what the setting is, shows you immediately kind of Amelia and her practice, starts introducing us to characters that play a role throughout the rest of the story. I think you get to meet what Willow pretty much right away when she walks into her office.
Yep.
You kind of get a sense of Amelia and who she is as a character and what she does and how she feels about her job and all that kind of stuff. And I think pretty early on, you also get the premise of the whole thing with her boss, right? Because I'm pretty sure she walks into her boss's office, and that's one of the earlier conversations that we have at the beginning of the script.
Yeah.
So overall, I mean, between pacing, moving through, kind of like, hey, you're in a, I don't know what you want to call it, not dermatologist, but whatever, plastic surgeon, more so kind of office or whatever.
Hmm.
You get the setting, you get the characters, so it's right off. It starts pretty good. How did you think? What did you think about it?
I thought it really is well established the tone of this story quite well. Also, with the obsession, that's the through line of this, which is the obsession to look beautiful and young all the time. Because the first patient that we see Amelia work on is 18 years old, and she ended up getting like lip filler. And at first, I thought it was overseas, but I guess it wasn't overseas. It was actually like at this other place in Beverly Hills that has a reputation for being affordable, but also pretty bad at what they do. And so this young girl who's 18, and I don't know why an 18-year-old would need lip collagen, but she ended up getting it so big that she kind of looked like a cartoon character. And we immediately get this nice little diagnosis from Amelia that makes us completely understand that this 40-year-old woman is not just an expert in her field, but she actually is like a legitimate doctor. Like, she's not just someone who is going into it for like the cheap money and just using like boilerplate procedures on her patients. She actually knows how to reverse, essentially malpractice on a person so long as they're not dead. And she does this with such confidence and such precision that, like, one of the things that really came through with Amelia's character is when she's talking to her patients, you genuinely feel the empathy of what the patient is going through, and how Amelia legitimately cares and is comforting her, and comforting their patients and giving her the best care, like she is a doctor treating someone that's on the brink of death and just comforting them. But the humor underlining this is the fact that it's all vanity. It's all about appearance, superficiality, things of that nature. Even when it comes to her relationship, who her husband is like 20 years older than her, and he's like a music producer. So he's clearly surrounded by a lot of beautiful women, and their marriage is really just more about a partnership as opposed to love. And that kind of kicks off a little bit of the story. But the atmosphere around her office, which is actually part of the hospital, like, it's not a private clinic. She works for a hospital, and she could have gone off to do private, but she doesn't, because we find out when we meet her boss that she has been submitting a proposal for an experimental form of research that essentially would unlock like the fountain of youth at least on visually, on not so much within the internals of their organs, muscles and bones, but definitely skin deep beauty, longevity. And I thought that is pretty interesting. Like, that's what her priority is. What did you think about that first scene where that 18-year-old girl is panicking over her lips and can't speak properly?
Yeah, well, I think it ties into the themes of the whole script, and I like the way that you said that it's all vanity, right? Because that's essentially everybody that comes into our office, and even the characters that you meet later on throughout the story. You can tell that their main priority and their main obsession is their looks,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing to do with character or substance or whatever. Most of these people seem like a mess in their everyday life, but they put on airs, they put on the appearance, they go get lip fillers and whatever to as she calls it, I think later on in the script, is like get that power over people,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's men or other women in their lives or whatever. And she thinks that looks is the way to do it. So you definitely get a sense. I mean, you get a sense of her character, what she stands for, and also how she is in her like professional practice right away, which is good because sometimes I think some of the scripts that we've reviewed, you don't really get that sense of the main character, especially so early in the script. But pretty much right off of page one or two or whatever, when she starts having some dialogue, you're like, all right, I understand how this woman operates, what she does, why she does it, that kind of stuff. It's not everything is fully revealed, obviously, but it's definitely a good character introduction. Um, and then, yeah, I mean, the thing about her working in the hospital, It's interesting because at least they set it makes the world believable too because they set it up in a way where that kind of plays in later with some of the stuff that happens with her. So at least they, the script writer, the screenwriter gave a thought to kind of how to piece together some of the later stuff, at least to make it make sense,
Mm-hmm. Oh no, there's some good
without
groundwork
giving too
laid.
much away.
Yeah, like there's some good groundwork laid here, which I really appreciated. I like the fact that through, I mean, it is done through dialogue, but it's done in a conversational way that feels very believable. And we learn that since she's worked at this hospital for the last 20 years, she has been submitting this proposal for this new research project that can unlock, youth, all that time, and every single time it keeps on getting rejected. And what's funny is that she's losing these grants or this research money to other doctors who are actually trying to do something useful. Like there's this one woman, I believe it's Penelope. So she gets a grant from the hospital to research for cancer research for children, like to save children from cancer. And you're like, well, that's a very noble research part. And of course, Amelia, she understands the value of it, but she's like, everybody's doing cancer research. Nobody's doing what I'm doing. I should be able to get my thing so that I can, really help people suffering from getting old. And the irony is that, like, Amelia, who's in her 40s, but she looks great all the time because she knows how to do the skincare and everything. But she has an assistant who's a paid intern who is also at the same university that Amelia graduated from, so it's her alma mater, and she is like a physical mess. Like she's like she would be beautiful if she actually put the work in and knew some taste and style, but she's not. So we have this kind of relationship of like I get, what is it? Is it Meryl Streep or Glenn Close in The Devil Wears Prada? One of the two. Like her, and then the new mousy character that comes in and then has to get you expect, oh, this character is eventually going to get a makeover and become the hot item at the company. But for Willow, that's actually not the case. It's if anything, Amelia keeps commenting on her appearance, making notice of like, oh, you've got an ingrown pimple forming there. Well, cortisone will take care of that, and just don't pick it. And then, of course, Willow nervously starts picking at it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it plays to the theme of the whole the script too about this. It's kind of, I guess, I don't know, the way I was reading it was it's kind of implied that even though she doesn't take care of herself and she's kind of a mess, it almost reads like Amelia's still jealous of this intern simply for the fact that she's younger.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's in one of the descriptions, but I think she still states that like her skin is still like it doesn't have any wrinkles. It's kind of not like flawless because later on it says that she's got like a couple of pimples or whatever, um, but she still has that youthful look to her, and it kind of reads like she's jealous of her intern or whatever, and she really pushes her around to sort of play into that power dynamic that's constant throughout the script. Um, and Willow's a pretty interesting character too because she I think it's established pretty much at the very beginning that Amelia sort of bullies her around, and even like you said, I think a lot of the character development that you're introduced to is done through the dialogue, which again is nice because this script, as opposed to the one that I was on 2 weeks ago, does not have pages and pages of paragraph descriptors. It's more so done just through the dialogue and the way the characters talk to each other. And you get the sense that Amelia is, she thinks she's above her, she bullies her, she constantly is talking about her appearance. So you really get that sense of the relationship between them pretty early on.
Yeah, I also get the sense that I think maybe Amelia sees herself in Willow and is
Yeah.
and because when we then meet Amelia's mother Joan, who's like 70s, Joan almost has the same interactions with Amelia that Amelia has with Willow. It's like, oh, you could look better doing this. Oh, hey, oh, I'm just not paying much attention to you. Yeah, sure, I like you. I'm your mother, but I only had you to hold on to my husband. And you're like, after she snatched her husband away from her from his then ex-wife. So you see this very toxic dynamic going on with a lot of these characters.
Yeah, and it's kind of cleverly done because you don't really get into a lot of either Amelia's or Willow's sort of backstory until a little bit later on in the script. But I think when you do, you kind of see what you're talking about here, that the relationship does sort of exemplify Amelia and her mother, or Amelia and her life track, and stuff like that. It's not until later that you find out more about Amelia when she was in med school. And it doesn't dive too deep into it. It's just kind of enough so that you get a sense of the character and sort of, like you said, see the same thing in Willow that you do in Amelia.
Hmm.
But it's done much later on in the script, sort of through secondary characters. So I thought it was interesting the way it was set up, because at first you don't immediately get it, but I think when you go back knowing what you know after you've read through the script, or potentially seen it in the movie or whatever, you go back and go, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like, the relationship between these two starts to fall into place a little bit more.
Yeah, you completely understand the dynamic, and also the difference between a woman like Amelia and her mother, and how her relationship with her mother versus Willow to Amelia, where Willow is the assistant. She's easily intimidated, and she just kind of capitulates to whatever Amelia requires. And then with Amelia and Joan, Amelia capitulates a lot, but every once in a while she'll push back, and then Joan will just kind of reestablish her authority over Amelia, like, really quickly, to basically say, like, oh, you don't talk to your mother like that, essentially. and and I'm like, that's an interesting dynamic, because it shows that Amelia has a certain level of agency and independence, but when it comes to her mother, the moment she tries to follow through with that with her versus everyone else around her, it just doesn't hold up. Like, her mom can always just kind of get underneath her skin, push her buttons, and reset her to the place of the status between those two relationships, which I thought was pretty
Which is
cool.
kind of, yeah, and it's kind of funny because I don't know what that says about her philosophy on life, right? That looks
Hmm.
are everything and whatever. Because I mean, theoretically, if you're thinking about it, her mother's in her 70s. Amelia's got to look better than her mom, at least in terms of just natural aging factors or whatever.
Yeah.
And that still doesn't give her the currency that she wants in life, right? Like, she's still sort of the subservient second to her mother when she's in the conversation. Um, anyway, I guess I don't know, that kind of plays to the power dynamics thing, but it's just kind of funny that even though Amelia does all these things for her looks, and looks better than everybody else in her friends group later on and whatever, but she's still um, she can never one up her mom, I guess, which is
Yeah.
kind of ironic, I guess. It's kind of funny.
Like, her mom's attention is always focused on herself and the things that she wants to accomplish, and that what she's trying to strive for. And every once in a while she'll throw advice to Amelia that kind of just gives a little jab at Amelia and who she is. I mean, even for instance, like, this entire first act is really slim, and it hits all the needed points, because we establish Amelia's expertise, her relationship with Willow, her relationship with her boss in the hospital, her desire to actually test out this theory, she discovered while she was in university. She graduated top of her class because of this discovery, but has never been able to get the financial backing to prove if it's viable or not. And then on top of that, she's married a man twice her age, essentially, at least at the time. Like, he was 40, she was 20, and now she's 40, he's 60. And they have this type of understanding where she has no children, and I think the reason she doesn't have children is she didn't want her body to be altered by a child, and we get a little
Right.
subtle hint of that later on in the script. And then the other part is that their relationship between Amelia and Barry has gotten to be, it's crossed the Rubicon of love and comfortability to just comfortability but nothing else. And when she finds out that Barry is sleeping with his newest musical client, Matilda, she's a little disturbed by that, but it doesn't actually hit home hard until Barry says, yeah, I'm leaving you for Matilda. And this just makes Amelia, like, completely go insane. Like, it's absurd. She's like, it's okay to cheat, but you don't end a marriage over it. And I'm like, that's kind of a funny thing to say. But the other part about this script is that this takes place in Beverly Hills. So this is supposed to be a commentary on, the people that live in the hills and their society. And that, yeah, like, marriages are for status, but sex is just fleeting. And and it's funny
Yeah, that's what I was
because
gonna say. Everything is like everything in her life is just outward appearances. Like
yeah.
nothing, there's nothing of substance in any of these people that you meet. Which actually was one of the things I was gonna comment about this too was, uh, one, what a depressing atmosphere this entire script like paints the picture of, right?
Hmm.
In terms of their lives and stuff. I just could never imagine nor would want to live a life like this that's just completely devoid of anything of substance, is just looks, just what brings you status, or I guess what it's not even what really brings you status. I guess what other people in the same circles perceive as giving you status, because I
Hmm.
think that's why she talks about her or her marriage too, right? Like she's not really incensed that she knows that her husband doesn't love her, because he then says that he's going after this young woman. I mean, I guess like any guy that goes after a younger woman and says, "Well, it's for love. It's what, she really loves me. This one's different or whatever."
Hmm.
He makes that comment in the script. She's not really incensed by any of that, but she is when the perception of her changes because she's going to go through a divorce and her husband's leaving her for somebody that's younger. So it's just, I mean, it goes along with the themes of the script and stuff, but it paints this picture of just like what a life this is. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
is this life even worth living for these characters? Because this is awful.
And it's also giving you a veneer. Oh, sorry. Yes, maybe a veneer, or maybe there's a better word to describe it. But it's giving the impression, at least from Amelia's perspective, that if she were younger, her marriage would be fine. Like that's basically
Right.
the communication that she's inferring from this decision, and it gets even awkward because she deduces that that her husband is cheating on her, which doesn't bother her while they're at this type of like celebrity charity event where Matilda is performing, and we find out that Matilda she's not the best singer, but she's attractive and she's got a little bit of that it factor. And I really like the clever way that Amelia figures out that her husband is into this girl, because as they're driving to the event, Hazel's song, no, sorry, Matilda's song appears on the radio, and Amelia is about to change the channel, but her husband stops her. He's like, no, this is the good song. This is the new client that we got. She's going to be hot. And it's the type of music that Amelia calls out to Barry, saying, "Yeah, you don't usually like this type of music." And he's like, "Well, this one's different." And he's like, "Okay, there's your first red flag, or second red flag. The first one is not turning off the music. Second one is saying this one's different." And then the third red flag is that he was able to sing along with the lyrics. So he's clearly listened to the song enough that he knows the lyrics and can pipe around to it. And I always find it kind of silly to I thought the idea of a man in their 60s singing along to a 20-something-year-old pop singer to be a little comical, and I'm like, that's some good dry humor right there. I thought that made me smile because that is very weird. But yeah, so they go to this event, and after the event, that's when Barry breaks the news to Amelia that yeah, he wants a divorce. He's going to be with Matilda, and she's livid, and he just packs up a bag and leaves. He's like, I'm going to be staying at this hotel just to kind of keep the drama kind of hidden, and yeah, go about your day because I'm not even going to be showing up at that other event that we're supposed to be at, so you can go stag or grab a date or what have you. I don't care. I'm not going to be there. I won't cause any drama. And of course, Amelia's kind of freaking out about this because, like, even now her friends are gossiping about the breakup of their marriage. And this is putting her in a position where, while she is able to work it as a victim, it's also like, well, now she's joining a club within Beverly Hills that she never wanted to be a part of because the club of being in a stable marriage was far more prestigious than the one of being a divorcee who may or may not remarry. you know?
Right. Yeah, and it's funny because I mean the way that he does the characters is really good too. Because like the mother reinforces the same things that you're saying, right? Because she tells the mother about this, what's happening, and her immediate thing was like, "Well, you don't go to Pilates enough. Like you're clearly not tight enough. You let yourself go. You know that kind of stuff." So
Yeah.
it's reinforced by like her friends group, her mom, like pretty much everybody around her, like you, because I think you said a couple of minutes ago that like if she, the impression you get is like if she was younger, her marriage would be fine or whatever, and she
Hmm.
wouldn't have this perceived loss of status, and it's reinforced by everybody around her. So even her mom coming out and being like, "Well, clearly it's because you don't do enough, you don't look young enough, you don't whatever," that kind of reinforces the her same idea that. Um, and I guess that's her thing throughout the whole script, right? Is that she's being slighted by somebody younger than her, somebody that looks better than her. And in her world, looks is the only currency that matters, right? That's
Hmm.
kind of the only thing that gets you a one up on other people.
And I think it's
Despite the fact that
yeah.
I was just going to say, despite the fact that it seems like she's probably smart, top of her field, is good at what she does, I don't think any of that stuff really matters to her as much as the how she's perceived slash how beautiful she's perceived to be, right?
Hmm.
If that makes sense.
No, it goes into a deeper sense of sadness where all those other accomplishments pale in comparison to her outer beauty. From her, from her friends, from the neighborhood and circles that she's in, it doesn't matter how brilliant she is, what sort of miracle she pulls off. Yeah, she'll get an accolade for it, but that accolade will be soon forgotten because her beauty is what's going to be front and center every time as part of the conversation. Like what she's
Which
wearing.
kind of it kind of makes me think. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut
No,
you off,
go
but
ahead,
it
please.
makes me think. I think somebody said the other day. I heard this somewhere on like a podcast I was listening to. But like, what's that saying that like you're the sum of the five closest people that you hang around with or whatever.
Hmm.
I almost wonder like you get a sense that like maybe if she didn't hang around with the group that she does, or she wasn't in Beverly Hills, or there wasn't this fake outside pressure to maintain appearances and like appearances are the only thing that matters, then maybe her life would have taken a different course. You know what I mean? Like maybe she would have been celebrated for her achievements or the fact that she's such a good doctor or whatever the thing may have been, right? Or her academic achievements or something. Or maybe she would have got like earlier with her boss, right? Maybe she would have gone on to try to get a grant and study something that maybe could have helped more people that wasn't just vanity related or whatever that actually made a difference in the medical field. Like I don't know, I mean even in plastic surgery there's plenty of stuff that could help. I mean they help burn victims and
Hmm.
plenty of other people that could recover from accidents and sort of try to live a normal life again, or at least get as close to normalcy as you can. But instead, because of the people that she's with and the circles and the environment that this fosters, the only thing that she hangs on to are her looks, her youth, and she'll pretty much fight and do whatever it takes to get those things back, right? Or the
Yep.
perception of those things.
Oh
So,
yeah, and I think that's you make a really great point because if her paper, which is about like restoring skin for its youthfulness, if I mean if she were like we understand in this script from the conversations that are had between her and other characters that she was a brilliant medical student and she could have gone into any field, but she went into essentially cosmetic surgery. And you get the sense that if she if she redirected the focus of the research that of her proposal to something like a burn victim or like getting rid of like severe birthmarks or things that would like
yeah,
really or like various like what is it rosacea and all those other types of skin conditions, that would probably have a lot more interest and credence with people on a board to approve the research. But because she always pitches it as just like restoring youth, it becomes
right.
incredibly a transparent and easily dismissible thing. And I think that brings great insight into her character. Because just like her mother's influence, even though it's very negative, it clearly has driven her to try and figure out a way to retain youthfulness. Because we also find out from stories with her mother that like after she gave birth to Amelia, she went back into Pilates, and sadly her body didn't rebound, and she still wasn't able to hold on to her marriage. So she becomes the second ex-wife to Amelia's father, and he goes on and marries another younger lady and kind of skips town, and Joan is living off of like I would assume some pretty high value alimony because she's wearing like the latest fashion. She's always drinking like mimosas or wine with all of her lunch at these exotic restaurants. She's got a very elaborate house that she got in the divorce. Like she's definitely living comfortable, but of course she's also 100% alone. Like all she has is Amelia. We don't see a Joan with any other friends. She's flipping through various
Right.
magazines and reading things online to kind of occupy her day. But she's clearly very alone, and Amelia is now seeing her own future reflected in her because Barry has left. And I'm like, that there's some really cool depth going on here. And I appreciate the irony that it's a story about the superficiality of people, but there's some pretty deep analysis about those relationships and how terrible they are. And I have to tip my hat to the writer, Matisse Haddad, on that, because that is a really difficult thing to pull off, especially with a subject matter that is so vain on its surface. It's easy to kind of just get lost in the vanity of it. So yeah, I like that first act.
Kind of yeah, or the story, the plot, right? Like get lost in just what's going on, like her trying to do this, find this fountain of youth thing and whatever. Like it's very easy, like you said, for it to just be superficial. Because that got me thinking too. Her, if you think about it, like her life, she kind of sees the parallels between her life and what her mother's life became, and I don't think she wants that. But at the same time, her mother is reinforcing the same things that got her here to begin with, and you get the sense that, or at least I did when I was reading it too, that the mother probably prized or put an emphasis on the same things that she's now pushing in her daughter, right? Like it wasn't because like maybe you're just a miserable person to be around, like maybe because you should have some other strength of character besides your beauty or whatever. Like maybe the guy just wants to go have fun with somebody that doesn't nag him 24/7 or is just obsessed with her looks or whatever, even if she's younger or, you know, kind of doesn't, you know, whatever, she's just young or inexperienced or whatever. But instead her mother immediately goes to, well, it's because of your looks, right? Like it's because you didn't do this enough, you didn't exercise enough, you let yourself go or whatever. And it's interesting, like again, what we were talking about before with the themes of this, it's like maybe if she had other people that had reinforced something different in her, you could see how her life might have turned out differently. She might have made different choices. But the circle that she's in, even her own mother keeps pushing the same things on her, and as a result, I mean, look at how she ends up throughout the story, right? And the things that she focuses on, and the fact that she didn't use her genius or whatever for anything else other than vanity projects, essentially. So it's
Yep.
interesting commentary, but also interesting parallels between all the characters.
Yeah, and I think the fact that the writer really made the voices very distinct and easy to kind of separate worked to the benefit of the story, because at no point did I ever get confused of who is talking to who. Except maybe between like that first character of Hazel at the start of the script and then Matilda later on, because they're both like 20 or under, and they have that type of attitude about them. And I really liked towards the end of the first act where Amelia goes to that second event that she's supposed to attend to, and Matilda ends up being there. And Matilda is, of course, like she does a whole lot of Instagram stuff. She talks about her sponsors to various like facial creams and everything to about giving glowing, beautiful skin and whatnot. And as she's getting a drink and sitting next to Amelia, Amelia kind of makes a conversation, starts up a conversation with her, and notices that Matilda is trying to hide a cyst that's kind of forming in her cheek. And Amelia says, I actually am a very competent plastic surgeon. I can actually take care of that for you discreetly in my office. Let me book you into an appointment. And, of course, Matilda warms up to her really quick on that and says, oh, my gosh, that'd be fantastic, because I'm going to be doing this music video in a couple of days, and I don't think makeup is going to be able to cover it up by the time that shoot arrives, because this thing is just getting bigger and bigger and harder and harder to cover. And I'm like, okay, this is a pretty good setup, because we also have some dramatic irony here, because Matilda has no idea that Amelia is Barry's wife. Amelia has already been told that Barry's leaving her for this girl. So we're basically on the edge of our seat going, okay, what's Amelia going to do to Matilda? Is she actually going to help her, or is she going to, throttle her? And we have a pretty interesting setup, a stepping stone for that as well, because Amelia returns to her office for the day where Matilda's going to show up, and she's got her kind of booked onto the schedule. But as the day proceeds and she's wrapping up with her clients, she ends up sending Willow home early, who's like, oh, you sure you don't need me to stay to clean up after your last appointment at like 6 o'clock? And Amelia's like, nope, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. You go back to school. You go back to study. Like the first time she's ever been kind of nice to Willow, until as Willow's leaving, she makes a commentary about her looks again. And then she's like, flips her off in the background where Amelia can't see. And yeah, so Amelia kind of deletes the appointment, which is the first suspicious aspect of it. And Matilda walks in kind of all in disguise, like no makeup. She's got the big sunglasses, a big hat. So nobody really has identified her. She goes straight to, she's wandering around the empty clinic that Amelia has. And then Amelia then kind of does a jump scare on her, like saying, oh, sorry, I was doing some paperwork in the office. I heard you come in. Let's go get you all set up. And she's all chipper and compassionate like we've seen in the opening act. And then she then she like gets her, on to, I guess, into the chair of sorts. And she talks about all of the things and the procedures that she's going to do. And she ends up, hitting the cyst with like a cortisone shot, rubbing certain like aloes and stuff on her skin, saying, "Oh, this is going to make it clear up. It's going to be good as new in a day or two." And then Amelia just instigates the conversation about, "Hey, I hear you're dating a 60-year-old guy." And she's like, and Matilda kind of just lays it out, says, "I'm not just dating him. I love him. I'm going to marry him." And Amelia gives her the question, like, "Well, why would you want to be with someone like 3 times your age? Wouldn't you want to be with someone like your own age in the 20s?" And Matilda makes a very valid argument that guys in her age don't have their act together. They're aimless. They don't have money. They don't have stability. They care more about just the instant gratification as opposed to something that has meaning. And she says when she's with Barry, he's got a stable job. He's got a strong income. He knows what he wants out of life. and it's like, oh, wow. Yeah, Barry's kind of she's got a point with regards to Barry, but it's also a little disheartening because this guy's like giving up his own marriage for someone younger. But then we also get the understanding that Matilda isn't really looking at Barry skin deep the way Amelia was. She's looking at him based on his character, the fact that he's an accomplished music producer, he's got a stable income, he doesn't have all the baggage or anxiety of a peer of Matilda's age. So, you get a sense that there might be something more honest about their relationship compared to Amelia and how she views her relationship with Barry. And I think that kind of amped up the jealousy for Amelia. Because, and I'm going to throw it to you, Raoul, how does Amelia respond to Matilda's statement about how great of a guy Barry is and why she prefers him over someone closer to her own age?
Well, I was gonna say too, because I think in the conversation I was trying to look for it in the script while you were talking, and I was trying to see if I could find the spot, but I don't remember. Isn't it kind of implied that she's also sleeping with a bunch of other guys that might be other people's husbands in the conversation? I thought there was like a nod or something to like, who's your husband or something, like it says something like that, and Amelia's like, how many of them are you sleeping with or whatever, you know what I mean, like as part of the conversation. And I thought that was kind of funny because like on one hand you have this like, well, he's different, he's not like other guys or whatever, but then you sort of get this implied nod to like, well, she's also probably sleeping with a bunch of other people. And again, the circles that they run in, just she's you kind of get the idea that she's young, she's famous, she probably has access to whoever she wants, even though she's not really that great at what she does, simply because of the fame and probably the status that it brings, I guess, to just be around her. Which is part of the same theme of everybody else in this script as well. So I just thought that was kind of funny. That am I wrong? Did you pick up on that or no?
I picked up on Amelia assuming that Matilda was sleeping with a bunch of other husbands, because I did find the conversation. I think it's on page 24, and basically Amelia asks like, how many husbands are you sleeping with? And Matilda defensively is like, I'm not. Barry's your husband. And Amelia's like, oh, I guess he didn't bother to tell you my name. And Matilda's like, all he told me about you is that you're basically separated and that you never had sex.
And I think the whole time she's having this conversation, like you said, I think Amelia too is like, maybe she's not sleeping with other people or whatever, but I think she's kind of trying to undermine their relationship anyway.
Yeah, doing what her mom would do.
You guys, Yeah, right. It's like you guys really aren't that close. If he didn't tell you this or he didn't tell you about his personal life or whatever, you know what I mean? So it's kind
Hmm.
of like kind of undermining. Yeah, you're right. And now that I think about it too, it's actually kind of funny because throughout this whole thing, I think Amelia's trying to do what Joan does to her, which is assert dominance and power over her through any means that she can. But I don't think she can because some of the responses that Matilda gives throws her off. And I think it's even written in the script that like she's seething, she gets angry or whatever, like she kind of loses her composure. And you get the sense that she can't pull off what her mother does. Like no matter what she does, she still doesn't have the cachet and the power that her mom does over her with like Amelia to other people, right? And I think that gets to her. Like I think that bothers her more than anything that she can't control this situation with a 20-something-year-old, right? Where she's supposed to be the superior kind of the older lady in this conversation
Yeah.
and I think that really gets to her.
I think it.
So,
I think it really gets to her when Amelia asks her the question that, like, if do you think Matilda, if you were 60, Barry would have fallen for you? Do you really think that? And Matilda honestly
right.
answers, "Yeah, I do." And of course, Amelia says, "Well, then you're an idiot." and
Yeah.
and then the thing is like, well, everything that Matilda has said why she likes Barry has nothing to do with his looks or anything
Right.
vain. It's like, oh no, he's a guy that believes in her music. He does need to be taken care of the way that Matilda has had to take care of other guys her age. He's got money. He's got money, but he also, shows her a lot of compassion. And I think, okay, so Matilda in this short scene, as vain as Matilda can be with her social media and her music career, when she's talking about Barry, there's something. It's going beyond the surface level. It's not so much about the prestige, the money, and that. It's the fact that he's the type of guy that has his act together, and it's a different relationship that attracts her more to that versus the guys that she's been with before that didn't know what they were doing. So, and
Well,
didn't
and
know
you
what
get a
they
sense
wanted.
of what Amelia values in relationships too, because I think she tells her like, "Don't you want to date some idiot with a six pack or whatever?" So clearly, you can tell like they're just on opposite spectrums of what matters, right? She's looking at somebody that maybe has a little bit more life experience, has their life together, isn't just like young and aimless or whatever. And Amelia's just like, well, who cares? You just don't you want the status of sleeping with the next hot thing or whatever, and you get the dynamic between them that they're not looking for the same thing and they don't look at life the same way either.
No, it's actually kind of interesting because what Amelia's argument is reminds me a lot of the relationship between Shania Twain and her husband Robert John Lang. Like, I mean, Shania Twain, she's a Canadian musician, but was world famous for a time there, and and like they were like 40 or 20, 25 years apart in age, and he claimed that he believed in her music the entire time. And Shania believed in him and, was her manager. So they got married. They've been together for years. And then all of a sudden, once Shania got to a certain age, he immediately ditches her. Like when her career kind of slows down, like she's doing tours and stuff, but not getting the same numbers that she did when she was much younger. They break up, and it was kind of crazy because now you had this woman who gave her youth to this man, and as far as I know, I don't think they had any kids, and and now she's alone. Well, she was alone. She did like marry someone else shortly afterwards, but I think she maybe had one kid. I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember. But like, she basically gave her youth away to this guy who then admitted later that she didn't really love him. And I'm getting the feeling like Amelia's point of view is that exact thing. Is like, you're wasting your time on Barry. He's way too old for you. He just wants you for your looks. And the moment that you get a little bit too old, he will discard you, just like all the other music producers that discarded all the other female artists in the past. And I like that mentality because I think there's examples of that happening, and it's definitely something that Amelia can latch onto. But how often do you see a young star like Matilda who actually is having a very mature perspective on relationships beyond her years? And it kind of says, like, yeah, maybe she's considered like a thought for music, like THOT for music, but that's all superficial. And then who she actually is a lot more deeper and compassionate. So we have that inverse again, where it keeps her on the opposite spectrum of Amelia. And so once we get this revelation and we get that answer from Matilda about, believing in Barry and him sticking around with her, what does Amelia do next in response to that answer?
Well, we get the first a big, I guess, big action thing that happened, and not action, but whatever. It's kind of interesting. When I was reading through this, I was like, I don't know if I like. I was trying to picture like what I would imagine in my head,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, is this like kind of, especially because there's like around so many needles and whatever. I'm like, is this kind of like a, I don't want to say like body horror, but like almost, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like. You just kind of like, you could put some things on screen, I guess, that would be pretty grotesque. Is all I'm saying, and it could probably have a pretty big impact. Just like I guess shock factor, but also it would be apt in this environment only because of the job that she does, and she's always around needles. It's like medical type of stuff or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of, I think it would go with the script. It would be interesting to see anyway.
Yeah, I could see it
anyway.
fitting like what Tarantino did with Kill Bill. I could see it being like that type of
Yeah.
presented, kind of like a shock value, maybe a little bit homage to the 70s, like body horror, violence stuff of those days.
Yeah, which leads into anyway what she does, which I think the conversation basically devolve. You can tell that the conversation is devolving between them as they sort of trade blows back and forth about, if you were older, do you really think he'd go for you, and that kind of stuff. And then I guess eventually it gets to her enough that she decides she's going to do something about it, and she gives her an injection somewhere between the eyes or whatever.
Well, she stabs
That
her in the eye with a blackhead remover. That's what she does. So stabs her right in the eye.
Yeah.
Which I thought, like,
Right.
oh, that is cool. Gross, terrible,
Yeah.
but cool.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm thinking about actually is that happens to later on.
Yeah,
That happens.
that's another lady. Yeah. That's a cool scene
This
too.
one she just goes straight for it. She just grabs the blackhead remover and stabs her straight in the eye. Yeah, and then there's even the description was pretty gross. I think she's like flailing around, obviously, and she's trying to fight her off, but obviously because she can't see, and she's also just probably in shock, she's Amelia easily like bats her away and stuff, and then kind of grabs it and keeps poking it further and further until she finally goes limp, right? And she's dead at that point. So
Yep.
we get our first murder in this whole thing,
We get our first,
which comes pretty.
it comes pretty
It's
early.
pretty early. It comes pretty early, right? I think it's like 20 something, almost 30 pages in. We get the first murder here.
Yeah, it's right on pace with like your turning point from Act 1 to Act 2, because now
Yeah.
Amelia has this 20-year-old beautiful young body, lifeless in her chair, blood slowly dripping out of her eye socket onto the tile floor, and she now needs to dispose of the body. And what's kind of fascinating here is that up until this point, we have learned that the main ingredient in Amelia's theory for this youth is bone marrow. Lots of bone marrow. An amount of bone marrow that would kill a normal person. So that's pretty telling. And what we end up having is that because she's in a hospital, because it's very late, and I'm kind of surprised by this, but maybe not too much, because I have been to a number of American hospitals whenever I'd visit the United States and do work or see friends or what have you that would be getting an operation or need to be picked up after some treatment or what have you. Some of the hospitals in Beverly Hills are relatively packed, but there are sections which are completely like ghost towns after a certain hour. And so I was like, okay, I could suspend my disbelief on that part. And and so that's what Amelia does. She actually goes down to a lab, gets a gurney, gets some stuff, brings it up to her clinic, puts the body on there, covers it all up, takes it back down to basically the morgue, and starts grabbing medical equipment such as a bone marrow extractor, and just starts stabbing it all over Matilda's corpse, uh, draining it of like bone marrow, like the viscousy red off pink fluid from Matilda's sternum, from the joints, from her spine, like everywhere, like thighs, everywhere that she can. She's just kind of like a vampire sucking that body dry of everything.
And I think that's why I said earlier too that the setting kind of you start to understand why she stuck around with the hospital and stuff. Because I mean, not only was it for the funding, but then just practical, like in the script anyway, it gives you a that suspension of disbelief, like you said, that like she would have access to all this stuff. Because one of the big things in stories like this or scripts like this, you're always like, okay, well, how can they pull this off? Like, is it at least believable that this might happen or whatever? And like you said, I think all of us are sort of used to like hospitals shutting the doors at some point or closing like after, visitation hours are over, that sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and the hospital being kind of empty, like you said. But then she also has access to all this lab equipment, all the syringes and whatever that she needs for this kind of stuff. So at least it's believable in terms, at least I thought so anyway when I was reading it. I was like, I could see this happening. Like it makes sense that she has access to the tools and the expertise and stuff around her that she could pull this off, I
I
guess.
mean, yeah. Not only that, I mean, she takes a bone saw and chops up Matilda's body, and then deposits those parts in various medical waste bins, which are never going to be examined because they're going to go into an incinerator later.
Right.
So it's like it's almost the perfect crime. And I think like, well, that's actually pretty. Like, okay, so she's using all of her faculties to their furthest point, and then she spends the entire night with the bone marrow after having gotten rid of Matilda's body, experimenting on it, and then creating this glowing golden serum. That and it's not a lot because like the amount that she extracted and I guess concentrated and put in there, she only has like the one vial. And in that morning, she's in her bathroom. She says a silent prayer, puts the chemical into a syringe, and then immediately, like with an expert, just injects it all over her face and lips and around her eyes. And within a few hours, she no longer looks like a woman in her mid-40s. Now she looks like a woman in her early 30s. Like her skin is glowing. There's a lot more life to it. Everything is all nice and taut. She can't even pull back her forehead skin anymore to like pull back her hairline. Everything is like in place where it should be, and it's all natural. It doesn't look like she got overly Botoxed or anything of that nature. So we find out that yeah, her theory in application is a success. And so now we get into this other idea, which is okay. So she's injected this serum into her body. How long does it last? Like it's this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of thing. Like is it 1 hour, 2 hours, 10 hours? What is it? But she does this and then immediately goes to see her mom Joan like at a restaurant, and Joan doesn't even like look at her and says, "Oh yeah, you look okay."
Yeah. Well, it goes back to the relationship. Like it's still the same. No matter what she does, I don't think she's ever going to have her approval anyway.
Right.
And I think that's what led her to make the choices that she's made in life. And you can kind of see that like she's fighting for this person's approval that is never going to give it to her anyway. And it's almost like she's fighting for this approval that she's never going to get, which has led her down this path that if she had just gone, you know what, I need to cut this relationship off because clearly this isn't gonna, this isn't, she's never gonna support me. I'm never gonna get her approval. It's never gonna be the mother-daughter relationship that I want or whatever. And then she may have gone down a different path, right? And same thing with the serum. I'm happy that the screenwriter went this way because that's one of the things that I was thinking too. Is like immediately when she did it, I was like, how long is this gonna last, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
the whole theme of the thing too is like beauty is fleeting, Right, it's only for the youth. She finds this serum that's like apparently a cure-all because she injects it, and like you said, it's like there's not a thing wrong with her face. But then immediately you go, this has to come at a cost, right? Like you can't just. She didn't find the fountain of youth, and there's no consequences. So, and then you don't find out until much later. There's some other stuff that comes up later, but I'm happy that at least that was one of the things that I was like, okay, how are they going to address this, and how long is this going to last? And it starts becoming apparent pretty soon after that this doesn't last forever, and there's consequences to her doing this.
Yeah, I think we figure out that it only lasts for maybe about 5 or 7 days or so.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely like it's not something that she has to do every day, but at least once a week. And what's funny is she has a conversation with her mom. Mom doesn't really pay it much mind, and then she goes and meets this new character named Dwarka, who she's like the head of a magazine, like a medical magazine publisher, and like it's kind of like Vogue for medicine. I think is how they kind of describe it. And as soon as Dwarka sees Amelia, she's like, "Oh my God, you look sensational! Like, what did you do?" And of course, excuse me. And of course, Amelia doesn't want to tip her hand, so she just says like, "Oh yeah, good moisturizer and skin treatment, healthy diet, that type of stuff." And Dwarka sees right through it. Like she's just like, "There's no way." And I got the sense when Dwarka was introduced that she would be played by Shohreh Aghdashloo, who is from like The Expanse. She was in like Star Trek Beyond. She was the voice of Gozer, the Gozerian, in the Ghostbusters Afterlife thing. She's got that kind of sultry smoker's voice to it, and I'm like, yeah, that's the voice I kept on hearing when she was speaking, because she's talking about is like, okay, I'm really impressed. I want to know your secret, and whatever that secret is, I can keep it a secret, but I can also connect you to the people that kind of, make this, whatever treatment you're doing, worldwide famous. And of course, Amelia is pretending to be modest at this point. She doesn't know who to trust. She's, of course, what she has done is an illegal experiment on a person in addition to killing that person prior. So it opens up a whole bag of worms that I don't think Amelia is ready to deal with right now. But we learn from Dwarka that one of Amelia's rivals, named Ellie, is who got the grant for the cancer research in children and all that type of stuff. She's doing a magazine piece under the title like 50 is the new 40, I think, or something of that nature. And basically Dwarka's like saying, man, if we could find a way to like squeeze you in onto that and talk about your study, that would be immense. And Amelia is thinking, okay, that's fine with me. And oh gosh, what was it? Who was the other person? So there was Ellie. So wait, or Elle is the magazine. I can't remember.
Yeah, and I think Samantha's her friend that is
Right,
the one that's
right.
supposed to do the shoot. Yeah, and actually, it's kind of funny because what did Samantha do? What did you say she did?
I think she's started new research in cancer treatment for children. Like,
Right, that's the one because I think it ties into the conversation she had with her boss earlier, right? That cancer research is going on and there's some significant whatever. Anyway, I don't
yeah.
know if it's implied that Samantha's the one doing it or whatever, but yeah. So clearly she's doing something that actually matters, which is kind of funny because she's the one being recognized, and it's not necessarily based off her looks. It's based off of what she's done in this thing or whatever that
Hmm.
is going to help people with cancer research, and it's like. Everything that Amelia's not, and she's still being recognized over her, and then Amelia's not getting the recognition that she so clearly wants but isn't getting from anyone. So I just thought it was funny, and obviously Samantha's introduced like that. So
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like, and we get added an idea that Samantha and Amelia were actually friends in med school. So like they graduated the same year. However, Amelia got higher grades, higher honors than Samantha. But lo and behold, here's Samantha being featured front and center on this new magazine, and so Amelia starts hatching an interesting plan to kind of help Samantha prep for her magazine shoot, because Samantha does actually go and see Amelia. She's one of her clients. Like she sees her on a regular basis, and of course Amelia Samantha books an appointment, and Amelia says, okay, well, what do you want me to do? And she's like, oh, just a couple of like little bit of Botox here and there, some skin cream stuff, all that type. And then Amelia suggests, well, why not like, a basic, like a mild face peel, just to kind of give your skin a little bit of a glow. And Samantha's a little hesitant on that, but
which actually, I was going to say before we move on from this, because Samantha's introduction it brings up something really interesting, and that's or at least in my mind, and stop me if at any point if whatever I'm saying doesn't make sense, but I think throughout this script, there's a couple of different points where some characters are introduced that sort of parallel Amelia's journey, like the fact that she was high, like she got, like you said, she was really she did really well academically anyway, like she got good grades, she was always top of her class, and she went on to do this stuff but never really receives the recognition that she wants to receive. Early on, very early on at the beginning of the script, when Willow's, who's Amelia's assistant at the practice, when we get introduced to her, Willow, and her friend, that because she's currently in med school or pre-med, whatever she is, her friend is sort of the same way, where Willow doesn't really get recognized or praised or whatever by the teachers, even though I think they say, right, that Willow's like top of her class, like she gets high grades, and I think that's why Amelia she said it took an interest in her, because she did really well in her studies, and then she also wants to go to the same med school that Amelia went to, so that's why she initially takes an interest in her. But Willow has the friend that also is like a teacher's pet, gets like the teacher comes up to them and only talks to her friend. Willow sort of gets overlooked. So you kind of get Willow's sort of comparison to Amelia, and you can kind of see the parallels there. And then you get this Samantha chick that's also her friend, that then also you can see parallels with. She's getting the accolades and the recognition that she wants, and she was also kind of really smart. You sort of get, I guess you get the impression that maybe Samantha was the one that got the high grades and was the high achiever and whatever, but then made better choices in her life, and now she's sort of getting recognized for it, even though maybe she's not as beautiful and put together and just prizes her looks and stuff like that, like Amelia does.
Right.
And you sort of get this like diverging. Samantha went this way, Amelia went this way. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely does, because even when Samantha, goes to Amelia's clinic, and she talks about how she's so excited and grateful that her study is getting approval and that she's being recognized for her brain and not her looks. It's clearly, it feels like it's a subtle dig at Amelia, who even though they're the same age as Samantha, Amelia is better looking. And now that she's got this serum on her and she's looking 10 years, 15 years younger, she looks even more fantastic. And of course, Samantha's showing a little envy of that. And then Samantha even says this other part, which is like, like my proposal still has yet to get approval. And Samantha's like, well, I'm not buying it, but I would if you were selling it. Like, that's, kind of like the subtlety of like, I don't believe your whatever new technique you're using on your skin is just a simple like dermaplaning or whatever they used in it. But Samantha's pretty much saying like, I trust you, Amelia. You're going to do what you need to do. And of course, Amelia recommends a baby peel, which is like a very harmless. It's not deep. It's not anything of that part. And we find out that Samantha's never had that type of work done. She's just had some like basic stuff. And so, she says like, she can do a patch test to make sure it'll be work, but it'll just take an extra 20 minutes. And then Samantha says, well, I really have to just get back to the office, so I trust you. And instead of doing a test to see if it'll work, this sets up Amelia so that she can't be accused of malpractice or anything, because she's given the choice to the patient, and the patient said, no, I want this. And so now she's able to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And she applies the face peel, works, her face is kind of glowing, and it's going to stay that way for a while. And she's so excited and so happy. And then we follow Samantha home. She wakes up the next morning, she looks into the mirror, and her face is like melting off. Like it's not like something out of Raiders of the Lost Ark, but basically it's all blistery red and horrifying, and she's freaking out. And then her husband sees this and he's trying to figure out what to do, and the only thing he can hand her is like a jar of jock itch. Which I'm like, okay, that's pretty funny. That made me laugh, because that's a husband who cares about his wife, but he's so desperate just to try and do something. He's just grabbing anything that looks like it could treat a type of facial rash that she's got. And
Yeah, I thought that was one of the funnier moments in the script, which is, and it's funny because it implied, like you said, it's a husband that cares, right? So it's sort of, again, Samantha's getting recognized for the things that she's doing, and also sort of has the life that maybe Amelia pictured her having, which is the with the husband and still being married, and then also getting recognized for her achievements and stuff, which obviously constantly eludes Amelia, but all the, some of the people around her, which she then decides to take it out on, are getting the things that she wants.
mm-hmm. And I like how, I mean, this is a great like setup and payoff, and then of course you know exactly what's going on. Samantha's going to contact Dwarka and say, I'm not going to a photo shoot. You can't use me. My face is not going to heal in time. Samantha contacts Amelia, like freaks out at her, but Amelia says, like, okay, like, this is the treatment and your face is going to be fine. And after a few days when you get this treatment done. And of course, Samantha's not happy about that, and it's going to overlap with her photo shoot. And so Dwarka reaches out and says, hey, Amelia, we're going to move you up here to be featured on the spread. And yeah, you're going to get the attention you deserve now. And of course, Dwarka is still using this opportunity to poke and prod at Amelia to find out what this miracle treatment is, because she sees dollar signs in her eyes, and also for Dwarka kind of being able to use it for herself. And here we get introduced to Cyrus, who's a photographer. I like how he's described as ambiguously European. So, like,
whatever that means.
Whatever it means, like, he's European, but you can't place like Eastern, Western. Is he from the Netherlands? Is he more Italian? Like, where is he? But Cyrus is just this guy that I can see him being very comical in the type, because like the first thing he says about Amelia is like, yeah, you are like a god, just, and you're beautiful, and I want you, and yes, let's take these poses. I'm gonna pose you on this spread here. So put your arm over this way, hike up your dress just a little bit. Let's get some more leg and thigh, because everything about you is beautiful. And I'm thinking like he's a male version of like Edna Mode from from The Incredibles or something.
Yeah, and obviously Amelia loves it because she's getting the attention that she obviously wants, and it's because of her looks and whatever. So it plays into her character too. And then obviously you get the, I think they have like an exchange back and forth, but I mean you pretty much get the idea that this is going to be like her new whatever arm piece or whatever. Because I think she still has to go to. I think at this point in the story she still has to go to that other event or whatever, right? And this is she's gonna. I think they pretty much decide at that point to meet later or hook up or whatever, and then go to this event together. So he kind of plays into the whole her whole lifestyle, right? And he's like this trendy young photographer and whatever. So she finally has the young attractive arm piece, eye candy type of thing.
Yeah, and it's a nice little play up, because what's fascinating about her relationship with this Cyrus guy is that she is literally just using him, and has no feelings at all towards him. Whereas we know from, especially how Barry's going to be acting soon, that Matilda actually had an impact on him, because as soon as she's done with her photo shoot and she's kind of teasing with Cyrus of him being her +1 at this event that's coming up, she gets a phone call from Penelope. Well, Penelope, who's another friend of Amelia's, and she's like the gossip queen of their circle. And she's calling and talking to Amelia in the middle of her getting waxed at a salon. and I think it's kind of funny, because she's like, she found out that Matilda didn't show up for her morning recording session. People are kind of getting concerned about where she might have gone. And then they're wondering if like something happened between her and Barry. Maybe they got into a fight, or maybe Barry, threatened to drop her from an album, and then she like took off or whatever. And then we get this little side conversation with the waxer, who basically just asks Penelope quietly, do you want it all off? And Penelope literally just says, leave a little on the top, like it's a haircut. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, they're doing some. I mean, there's some satirical depth thrown in here about that. I don't even know what it means to say leave a little on the top for a waxing job. I'm like, where's the top in that? Like, I know the landscape, but I'm like, is the top on the lower half? Is it like higher up, like towards the belly? Like, I don't know what she means by that.
Yeah, it's a little ambiguous when she says the top. What are we referring to here?
Yeah. And then of course, like, the waxer does the wax and then pulls it off, and of course, and Penelope does a curse word in Spanish, I think. And yeah. So like Amelia figures out that, yep, okay, people are kind of onto the fact that Matilda's missing, but she's kind of calm because there's no body to be found. But what ends up happening is that Amelia is across from a pair of officers that are investigating Matilda's disappearance. And the reason that they're looking at Amelia is because Amelia is the wife of Barry, who it is now known that he's been in a relationship with her. So they're just covering all their bases. And what's funny is that Amelia is like very cooperative and says that, she kind of never really met her or anything. And then on top of that, she also laughs at the idea that Barry could do any harm to Matilda. Like, it's just that, like she says, like, he's a good man, but he doesn't even know where to take his dry cleaning. If he's the type of guy, if he did anything nefarious to that poor child, like he's that level of incompetent in things that are not music related that he would easily have been discovered by now if that were the case. And somehow that kind of convinces both officers that she's not even a suspect, because their questioning makes it set up like, oh, maybe she's going to tip her hat and they're going to pick up on that. But she ends up having, like, because she has this type of weird look about some of the questions that the officers ask her, and then the officers are described as like clocking her reaction to see if there's like something so suspicious, and then that's when she kind of just vomits out this little diatribe about how, like, her husband's a good man, silly, incompetent when it comes to basic tasks, but when it comes to music, he's a genius. So yeah, if he did anything, you would have already figured it out by now. There's no way he's competent enough to hide things of that nature. And the cops just kind of buy into this, like, right away. And this is not going to be the last time we see these officers, because they still have to find a body, and they still have to, like, thoroughly investigate all plausible suspects. And as Amelia's story progresses, after all, she has just now done an acid wash on her competition's face. She has killed Matilda. And then after the encounter with the officers, when she's going to apply the next version of her facial cream, she does so, but then she drops the vial and the glass breaks, and of course all the serum is out on the ground. And this part here I thought was kind of interesting, because like, I'm surprised that she would put it into a glass vial and not maybe more an acrylic or plastic one, especially when it comes to syringe, because I do know when they draw blood, they still put it in glass vials, and that's just for their procedures. But sometimes you have other medication that's not really in glass. it's in like plastic bottles or what have you. And I'm thinking, like, if this serum is so special, so rare, you'd probably want to put it in the most durable casing you can possibly get so that you don't break it and shatter. But maybe this is a part of her superficiality and hubris perception. But I thought, okay, this is our one moment of contrivance to sort of get Amelia to commit another murder so she can harvest the bone marrow and then recreate the serum. And this leads into something with Penelope, because Penelope is the gossip queen. She's roughly the same age as Amelia, and when Amelia when her treatment starts to fade and she's getting like more severe crow's feet and more wrinkles because the withdrawal of this serum has exponential damage effect on her skin. So it's basically setting up like if she wants to still look beautiful and whatnot, she's got to be doing this all the time. So we're getting into that, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. We're getting into the Star Trek episode Mud's Women, where they have to keep
Yeah,
taking the thing.
oh, and I like the way that they set this up too, because like you said, the breaking of the glass vial and stuff, and she doesn't have much of it left anyway, or whatever. Because you get into it a little bit later in the script, but it basically is like you need a lot of source material for very little product type of thing, and then she has this moment where like she doesn't have very much of it left, and she breaks the vial and stuff. And I think that gives her like it gives like a little bit of urgency to her situation, where it's like what's she going to do next? Like she clearly needs to figure something out. And also the veneer is slipping, where the it's starting to kind of wear off a little bit. And like you said, it's not only did she go back to how she was before, but it's actually worse now, because then she also starts, I think it says like develops like a rash on her jaw or something like that, which is
Yeah,
starting to like not like fester, but it kind of looks really bad or whatever. So she's getting like her wrinkles back, the everything else that she had before, and now it's even worse because it's actually her appearance has actually degraded even past what she was before she decided to do all of this. Um, and I think this is the part of the script I think pretty much where she decides to like run off, where she thinks nobody will see her,
right.
right? And she kind of ends up on a spa on the other side of town or whatever. And she meets, like you said, she meets her friend there, which is this Penelope girl. And when they see each other, she kind of has the same reaction, and she's like, "Oh my God, what are you doing here? Like, I didn't think you'd be here, or whatever." And she's like, and I think her friend Penelope is like, "Yeah, that's why I chose to go to this spa like hours across town or whatever, because I didn't think anybody we knew like in our circle would be here at all or whatever." And
Yeah.
so she's shocked to see Amelia there at the same time.
Oh
I thought that was
yeah.
pretty funny between,
I thought it was
yeah,
pretty funny, and she ended up and they talk about like, well, she's here because she just had this one procedure, and she wants to have this other procedure, and of course Amelia's like, well, you can't really have like another. I think she wanted to have like a filler. Yeah, she wanted to have like a filler after doing a first stage chemical peel, and or was it? I'm trying to remember. Hold on, it's yeah, she needs to do another 2 millimeter filler, but she just got like fat removal, and so you have to wait like so
right.
many more weeks or months before you do that. And Penelope's like, oh, I don't want to wait because it's taken years for her just to get her body back into shape after having a kid. And then on top of that, she says the benefits of having a kid is that her butt got bigger and her breasts got bigger, so she looked more like a woman. And then she makes a subtle dig at Amelia, who isn't as curvy, but she also doesn't have the wider hips from that initial separation of birth, so she still has that youthful silhouette that Penelope is a little envious of. But Amelia decides, like, okay, listen, you're good at keeping secrets. Maybe I can kind of squeeze you in at my office, get you what you need, but you have to do it carefully. And Penelope's like, I promise, I promise, I promise. And of course, we also get this nice little setup that Amelia is saying, like, you could always just go to Costa Rica and do it, but who knows what type of level of quality of procedures you'll get there. But regardless, let's see what we can do. And so we get the setup where they go back to her office, and then she's talking about how like she rather have the normal normal liposuction, get some lip filler, not do Ozempic because that kept her on the toilet for like the entire time she was on it. So I thought that was a fun little dig. And so this is where we get to that scene where she uses the Botox that freezes her face. And so since you kind of remember this more than I do, I'll have you describe the scene and how Amelia like proceeds with Penelope and what she does with her.
Yeah, and I thought, I mean, going back to what you said just a second before too, I thought it was really interesting the way that Amelia is written, because you kind of get the sense that she's a psychopath. I mean, I think that's the way she's intended to be written.
Mm-hmm.
But because she, like you said, she has the interaction with Penelope right at the spa where
Yep.
she meets, and then she weaves in the thing in conversation about Costa Rica, which is funny because then she uses that later on, and I won't give too much away about that or whatever, but that does end up coming back. But she's kind of like constantly setting herself up for you get the sense that because at this point she's already talked to the officers and she already knows that like she's under some sort of suspicion. So it's funny that the things that she weaves through conversation come back later on as sort of like a way she's constantly paying attention to like her image, how she comes across to people, and sort of covering, her own ass in terms of like what she tells people and sort of like uh she's kind of setting herself up for later stuff. Like she
Hmm.
has the thing about Costa Rica for Penelope. What was it? She used some other place for somebody else earlier in the script, and it escapes my memory right now. But she did something similar where she's like, "Oh, well, you should just do this or whatever," and it ends up coming back, and she uses that as an excuse for why they might have, not
Yeah,
might have not shown up or not done
maybe
something or
something like
whatever.
Philippines for Matilda or something like that, or I can't remember. But yeah,
Yeah,
she uses other locales outside of the U.S. as
right.
red herrings
And it's
for
like
the
she's
authorities.
covering up her, yeah, and she's covering up her steps, right? Like
Hmm.
she's always thinking like three steps ahead of everybody to be like, well, she gathers information on them, and then yeah, like you said for Matilda, she's like, well, she said this thing about she's really flighty or whatever, and so she probably booked a trip to wherever or something like that to like kind of be like, well, I don't know, but she wouldn't be here and I didn't see her or whatever, right? And she
Hmm.
sort of does the same thing with Penelope, where she mentions she wants to get this treatment, and then she says, well, maybe you could go to book a trip to Costa Rica or something, and maybe they'll do it for you or whatever. So she's not willing to out herself 100% in her practice. Like she still wants to appear like she's above board with most stuff, but then she'll suggest stuff to people that kind of like puts an idea in their head about like, well, maybe I can go do this, or like she kind of uses everybody's weaknesses and stuff that she knows about them to her advantage.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting how she plays people like that. But anyway, yeah, they end up going back to her office, and then she's doing this. It sets up, like you said, this thing about where she'll do some stuff for her, but she's not willing to sort of compromise her license or whatever. She still wants to appear like she's above board. So what she does is she gives her an injection. They go back and they talk about all these things she wants done, and then she ends up taking this injection and putting it, somewhere between her eyes. And everything seems to be going smooth at first or whatever, but then Penelope's like, "Oh my God, I can't see," and she's like, "What do you mean?" And eventually she's like, no, everything's like going dark or whatever. And I think Amelia even says like, oh, it's like a natural reaction for whatever, it's like a steroid or something. But as she's explaining it, it seems like her demeanor gets more and more like cool.
Hmm.
And then she starts going into the description of like, yeah, it's a whatever, I don't know what she says, it's like a type of steroid and it's going to do this to you and whatever. And it's so clearly she's setting up like this is going to be my next victim type of thing. But it goes from a pleasant, friendly conversation about the thing she wants done, and she's like helping her out, to that that veneer drops, and then you see like, oh, she has a plan this whole time about how she's going to do this to her. And anyway, Penelope starts freaking out, and obviously, and she's like frantically looking for an exit. So she's kind of like feeling around and trying to get up out of the chair and whatever, and she finally finds the door handle, but I think Amelia like kicks the door back in or whatever.
Hmm.
And then that's at that point. I don't. Does she kills her again in like a gruesome manner, doesn't she? Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I she
Liquid
yeah,
nitrogen. She like
she
puts a funnel of it down her throat.
she shoves her back down on the chair, yeah, and then shoves a tube down her throat and turns on the liquid nitrogen, and so she basically slowly freezes from the inside out, essentially, and eventually she goes limp on the chair too, and she's dead at that point. So
Yeah.
we
So
have her second victim.
yeah, we have our second victim. Now, here's the thing that kind of made me ask some questions, which is, well, when the liquid nitrogen, I mean, it would definitely freeze her esophagus and her stomach and liver, but would it also spread out to maybe her bone and some other muscle tissue as well? Because, I mean, it's concentrated in one area, but liquid nitrogen just kind of like sucks all the heat out of somebody, to the point where, like we've seen it used in other science fiction and horror films, where you dip your hand in it and you smash it on a surface and it just shatters completely, and it's only for a couple of seconds. I would think maybe something not exactly 100% close to that, but a little similar to that would be the case, like her head would then be, crystallized to a point where just hits it just right, it'd shatter into a million pieces.
Yeah.
But we don't get that here. But we do have Penelope as a second victim, and of course Samantha does the exact same procedure on Penelope that she did with Matilda, and she gets the serum, but it doesn't glow as brightly as the one from Matilda. And then when she does use it, it does work a little bit, but she comes to the conclusion that, of course, the younger the source of the bone marrow, the more potent and youthful you will look. And so now Amelia realizes that she has to be on the hunt for a more youthful candidate. And part of me was wondering, like, oh, do you think she's going to go back to Cyrus and do this to him? And there's a situation where they're in a hotel room and you think that they're going to hook up, and Matilda just plays like a power game with him, where, like, yeah, she strips in front of him and she's like, yeah, you're not going to get to touch me or do anything with me. And then once that is over, she just kind of like walks away. And then the police come knocking on her door saying, hey, do you know where Penelope went? And then this is where she says, oh, she asked me to do collagen injection on her, but she just had this other procedure, and I said no, I couldn't. And then she mentioned about going to Costa Rica, and then we find out that, yeah, before she, disposed of Penelope's body, she used her phone, unlocked her phone with her face, and used it to book tickets to Costa Rica so that you'd have proof of sale and purchase. But of course, there's no way for the authorities to, I guess, check to see if she boarded yet, or by the time they do, they wouldn't be able to find out any information, positive or negative, at that point. So I thought it was kind of funny how we got to see these two cops back again, investigating something that is in her orbit, and she cleverly manages to find a way to sort of make herself not appear like a suspect. And then I think what's also funny about this is that while this is happening, and the police go away, Joan talks about how she just got this great deal on getting her nails done, but it's a home service. And she's like, I'm not having them come to my home because they're clearly illegal immigrants and they're going to steal something. So I sent them to your place where I'll meet you at this day and time. And I'm like, I know mothers like that. I know exactly that type of thing. So I like that hits pretty close to home to some of my friends when you go visit them and all of a sudden their mom just barges in and says, yeah, I'm doing this. These people are going to show up in a couple of minutes to do something for me, like give me a massage or whatever. And it's just like, does this happen normally? And my buddies would be like, yeah, this happens all the time. Like, I can't. And one of them says, the strange thing is that no one has ever stolen anything from my place that my mom has brought over. So I don't know why she's so distrusting for these people. So yeah,
it's like it's people are just clearly trying to make a living and like doing something that they're getting paid for or whatever. And it's funny how distrustful she is of them anyway, when probably nothing was going to happen anyway. But I don't know if she uses that as an excuse or whatever. But again, it's like you get the power dynamics between the relationship, right? Where it's like the mom pretty much just gets away with whatever she wants, and she does kind of just uses her daughter for whatever, essentially. Because you get the sense that like she doesn't really care if something gets stolen from her daughter's house. Like she's not willing to watch out for her. She just cares if something gets stolen or whatever, or something happens at her house.
Right.
And yeah, which is, it's really funny, the relationship between these two anyway. Every time they talk, it's like it's funny how much Amelia is just constantly undermined by her mother.
And what's really funny is that even though we haven't spoken about Willow in a bit of a time, Willow is actually starting to put together what Amelia is doing. Like, her and her roommate are kind of getting a bit obsessive. And we also find out how clever and smart Willow is, because when they start doing research into Matilda and looking at her Instagram and everything, Willow is able to identify, like, the day before she went missing, she does this Instagram post about sponsorship to her facial cream. And Willow's like, oh, she's using a really advanced filter because I know that her face doesn't look like that. The tones are all off. But, like, the average person wouldn't notice it, but Willow would, because she's been around Amelia enough to see before and after versions of various patients. And I like how her roommate is, like, saying, okay, let's start, like, do a true crime look into this. And they start doing all this research, and then they literally come up with exactly what Amelia's doing, but it sounds so outrageous that they immediately dismiss it because it can't possibly be possible. And I'm like, that's also funny too. Like, you hit on something that does seem like it's straight out of a movie, and you immediately dismiss it because it seems like it's straight out of a movie. And I'm like, that's a good meta commentary for this.
And it's funny too, because her character, Willow's characters, it was interesting to me. I mean, like we talked about at the beginning of the script, you get the sense that these characters are sort of they have the same journey through life. You just are wondering if they're going to make different choices or not. And Willow's one of those, like I said, where it seems like she's sort of hitting on the same track as Amelia, and she had throughout the whole script. This is the kind of like the secondary. I don't know. Would you say like it's sort of the secondary plot where like Willow's trying to piece together everything that's happening, and she sort of gets like not only Amelia treats her really bad, and like not only is she sort of like, wow, Amelia's a terrible person. But then she also starts piecing together these things that are like, something about this doesn't make sense, and then she's there several times when the officers come into the office to be like, we need to talk to Amelia about something. And so she starts piecing this stuff together, which is sort of the thing that drives the whole secondary storyline of Willow sort of piecing more stuff together, at least. And even like, I think we're at the point now where like she's sort of like, well, she needs to go in for an interview or whatever, and she has other stuff going on in her life. Willow does, that she should be focusing on.
Yeah, she has she has to get her intern hours signed off on so that she can get her final credit. She's got exams coming up. She's got interviews, but all this is happening at the same time that Amelia has figured out a way to actually start luring people to her clinic and kill them and harvest their bone marrow to create serum. So she's going on like hikes, and she's finding like young active people and says, oh yeah, like, you're a great body, great exercise, but I can see like the sun is damaging your skin, but I can actually fix that with an appointment over here at my clinic. And then she goes in there, she kills the person, she harvests their bone marrow, and they're younger, so she gets the nice glowing gold serum, and she just starts stockpiling it in her office, going on essentially a killing spree to a very unsuspecting people, and people that are pretty much outside of her circle. Like, she's going to places she's never gone before just to pick up people of the right age so that she can do this. And while Willow is while the police are starting to really kind of reevaluate their investigation, and they go back to question Amelia again, Willow kind of hides in Amelia's office because she pickpockets her from her doctor's coat, pickpockets her office keys, goes inside, and she starts looking for something, and she finds the research proposal that Amelia did in college that I guess her teacher, Willow's teacher, talked about while in class one day. And then she starts rummaging around the office, and she ends up finding the serum. And she ends up using this a little bit on herself, and then puts it back, and then puts the file in the wrong spot, which, cliche as it is. And then when Amelia comes into her office, she's like, oh, what are you doing in here, Willow? She's like, oh, I just wanted to put some stuff away for you, and what have you. And then she kind of scurries out there. And quickly, Amelia realizes that, Willow might know what she's doing. The only thing that she doesn't see is like all of her vials are still where they're supposed to be, but the file of her proposal is in the front of the cabinet, as opposed to the back of the cabinet where it's normally found. And so Amelia has a suspicion of Willow, but not enough to actually see if there's any sort of change. But then Willow goes through something miraculous, because when she wakes up the next morning, she looks in the mirror, she no longer looks like the frumpy, unkept intern. She's got that whole revitalized youth, glowing aspect to her that even her roommate comments on. Is like, oh my gosh, what happened to you? Like, you look great, for the first time ever.
Yeah, like her skin's cleared up and everything. She doesn't have like the acne anymore. So clearly her youth, her serum worked on her too.
So it works on anybody. Like, it's not just specific to Amelia, and then this goes back to, like, we can go back to Dwarka saying, like, listen, honey, I don't know what it is that's going on, but whatever you're doing, have the connections to make this go harder, where you can be with whomever you want. You will have as much money. You'll have more money than you ever thought to imagine. Nobody will even remember that you got divorced because they'll all care about this new glowing thing. I have all the right people in mind in order to get this done. You just give me the word and we do it. And of course, Amelia's like, I can't like I can't tell you anything other than it's this treatment. Like it's just facial cream, good diet, all that stuff. And then Dwarka's like, when you're ready, I'll be here. So we've got that kind of set up. And then we kind of get to our climax. And so this is where we're going to be like kind of orbiting around spoiler areas, but we are going to cut off on the spoiler stuff pretty soon because the climax starts at Amelia's home. Joan shows up with the nail salon people. So they're out like on the deck by the pool. They're getting their nails done. Joan is, of course, being pretty discriminatory, assuming that the people doing their nails don't speak English, but they clearly do. And she's saying all these horrible things. And then the nails are done. The nail salon technicians, they go back to their car, and Amelia and Joan just kind of have an argument. And Amelia just ends up losing it and just starts strangling Joan like right in the kitchen. And then as she's slowly, choking the life out of her mother, Amelia catches one of the nail technicians having come back inside the house, and she's just remarking like, I was just going to use the bathroom before we left. and so Amelia has to like smack Joan's head against the marble tabletop and then chase after the nail technician and take her down with like a nail file. And then while she's doing that, the other nail technician comes in saying like, oh, I wonder why my partner is so late. And then she starts seeing Amelia killing her partner. And so she's running after, so they're running after the way to get this all foot chase, and it gets all bloody and everything. And then all of a sudden there's a knock at the door. And it's the cops. And so Amelia has to kind of like clean herself up really quick, and she only opens the door a crack. And they're basically saying like, yeah, so we know what happened to Matilda. And that's where we're going to cut it off, because we don't want you to find out like what happens. But what we will say is that there is a portion of the script that shows that Amelia goes back to see Barry. And Barry is like, he's sleep deprived, he's distraught, he's terrified about Matilda and that she's missing. You find out that he actually really does care a lot more about her than just being a piece of, a woman, so to speak.
Yeah.
But because Amelia is looking great with that serum, Barry is kind of saying like, you look really good. Maybe I don't need Matilda anymore. Maybe we can kind of save this thing. And of course the two, they then make love. And what's funny is that Amelia just is kind of like lying there completely non-stimulated, just taking it. And then she's making jokes about Barry's performance. Like, do you need a pill? Maybe catch your breath for a moment. Like, and then of course, like they complete their session, and then he rolls over to go to sleep, and he puts on like a sleep apnea machine. And we find out that Amelia has brought with her some bone fragments and some hair and stuff that we assume is from Matilda, and she just secretly plants it throughout the hotel. And when the cops come by, we don't know if they think Barry is accused of, is the one who has killed Matilda, or if they know that Amelia has planted the evidence. And so we're going to leave that ambiguous for you guys. You have to read the script to find out. And there's a whole another section after that of conflict and betrayal of sorts that we have to sadly avoid. But you can find out about it if you just read the script, which you can just Google or online for Skin. If you're having trouble finding that, just reach out to me via DMs. I'll be happy to send it to you. But let's get over to Raoul with some of your final thoughts on the script before we give it a vote whether to greenlight or pass.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately, just for spoilers or whatever, we can't talk about it, but some really interesting stuff happens in the end. which I encourage everybody to read the script. I thought it was a good read. So I guess overall, I mean, pacing was really nice. I thought the characters were really well introduced and sort of had a consistent tone throughout. And I liked the themes and stuff that it touched on. So I mean, overall, I kind of hooked by this script, and I thought it definitely interesting. I
Hmm.
like this idea of this. Serum chasing after beauty thing that she was doing throughout the whole script and sort of what it led to. So yeah, I mean I actually really liked it. I thought it was a good read too, and I thought it was pretty well done. And even like just on a technical level, not really too many like mistakes or spelling errors. I think there was one thing that I caught, and it was towards like kind of the end of the script.
Right.
Um, but that was about it. Everything else, I mean, it was fairly well put together, and the even the descriptions were pretty good, vague enough that you can sort of do whatever you want, but it conveys just enough of kind of what you're supposed to be seeing visually. So I thought it was overall, I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat because while there was a couple of contrivances that maybe stretched my suspension of disbelief a little bit too much, the character work on
Yeah,
this is great. The allegory is great. I mean, the only stuff that I would say that I could call it like dated would be like the use of social media stuff, but that's actually very sparingly done. It's really only focused primarily around Matilda, and after that, it's like this could be said almost any time, 21st century
right.
type of thing. I mean, even when they bring up the fact of like a print magazine, you're like, oh, you can even kind of like fudge it to be like, late 90s when magazines on the shelf were actually a thing, and not only dedicated to websites. Um, so, yeah, like I
Yeah,
thought,
because even though it gives you the impression that it's sort of modern day, they don't really delve too much into it.
right.
And I actually agree with you too. There are a couple of spots in the script where I was like, okay, this is like we're just gonna skim past some of the details here. We're not really gonna delve too deep into the specifics of some of this stuff. So it does kind of stretch your disbelief a little bit. Um, but that wasn't. I think when I was reading through it, I got the impression, obviously, that the specifics of all this stuff isn't really the focus of what the script is. I think it's more so the characters and what the script is trying to say about each one of these characters and stuff. Not so much a focus on like what's actually happening. I feel like some of the stuff you just kind of have to go, yeah, okay, she did this. Yeah, okay, maybe she planted some evidence. Yeah, okay, whatever. But I don't think there's too much of it. I think it's enough that you can sort of skip past that stuff and it's fine.
Yeah, like it's not significant enough to compromise the integrity of the story, the integrity of the characters, or the integrity of the plot. And the other part too is like this story itself is a very much a commentary on superficiality culture. I mean, it's really great. I love the fact that Amelia as a character is primarily like the only person that she kills that is as equal in superficiality as her is Penelope, and of course when she uses her serum, it's not as effective on her body as the other people. But I wonder if there's also an aspect to it that could be explored where maybe it's not just the youthfulness of the bone marrow, maybe it's also like the purity of their character, right? Because all the other people that she's killing and harvesting their bone marrow, they're they're not the type of people in her circle. They're very much outside of it. We had Matilda who believes in like actual love and actual relationships and stability, and then all the other people that we're seeing through the montage of sorts, they're not doing stuff like selfishly. Like they're just interacting like someone's just going on to a hike. So she wants to see nature and beauty and she wants to, be outdoors. She's not going to a party, she's not doing surgery or something. She's like a traditional type of, health nut as opposed to the, supplements and makeup and cream and all that type of stuff. And I think there's something to be said there. Like this is the type of movie that it brushes right up against like horror and body horror, but it also has a little bit of
Yeah.
comedy and a lot of satire throughout it, and it is saying something. Like this is the type of story where it has a message, but the message is a byproduct of all the interactions with these characters. Like it's something that you as a puzzle, as an audience member are piecing it together to form what the final puzzle is at the end. And you've got this kind of like catharsis where you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's the full picture of this. That's what makes this feel like a really cool story. And even with the ending, which again, recommend you guys read it and check it out. It definitely will, I would say, gets under your skin. No pun intended at that point. So I mean, I think the audience is pretty obvious to what our decisions are, but let's make it official. Raul, would you give this a green light or a pass for Skin?
Yep, it's a green light for me, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's also a green light for me as well. It's the type of movie you could see like Blumhouse or A24 doing. You know, it's not a big tentpole film, but it could be modestly filmed on a modest budget. I can see a number of female actors just chomping at the bit to get this role of Amelia. I can see a couple of older actresses loving to play Joan, just because of some of the stuff she gets to say. um, and you know what's funny is like part of me is wondering like I would love to see Selma Hayek play Penelope because that would be I think brilliant because you wouldn't expect her to be that type of character, but I think that would be really fun for her as an actress because she still looks amazing for her age, and then to have her in a movie about vanity and then being self-conscious of her looks. I think there's some like irony there with that type of casting. So I hope like if this movie does get made, that they get a really great cast because that's gonna cause people to give it the attention it needs. And if they have managed to if they keep the ending the way it is and they don't change too much of the script, I think a lot of people watching this would really get fascinated by it. I think they'd be kind of thrown off because they'd probably see the advertisement look more like it's a chick flick, but
Yeah.
but the actual final product would be something really enjoyable. I kind of would liken it to like the first Deadpool movie, how the advertising made it look like it was a superhero romantic comedy, but when you actually saw it, you're like, well, this is a lot more gruesome and R-rated than your typical romantic comedy. And I think that's kind of like I think that's a good parallel for this type of script. So let's go and check in with the Patreon. Let's see what those guys have said here. So this case here, we are out of sync. We have people on the Patreon had voted to pass on the script. So they have a different opinion of us, and of course that's okay. Now, unfortunately, the patrons have not commented on their opinion on that. So again, if you are listening to this and you are a Patreon and you did read the script, please, and you did vote on the poll, please share with us your thoughts. If you don't want us to read out your name, just leave that into the comment. But we'll love to actually include your thoughts into the conversation so that we can get more rounded subjects on the matter and really kind of dig deeper into the script besides just the individual commentary that we have for you today. With that being said, we're going to go over to the live chat and we have a $10 donation from the Dead Man who says, don't know how I got a wrench. I'm honored. Plugging my channel where twice a week I review random Star Trek episodes Thursdays and Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern. Thanks, Script Doctor. Poop emojis won't stop. Well, I don't expect them to stop. I hope we get more of them. And happy to do that for you, Dead Man. So I'll be looking forward to checking out your commentary on those Star Trek episodes, as I am a big Star Trek fan. If you haven't picked up from my smock that I'm wearing, it's Leonard McCoy's from the original series. And then he follows it up with a 99-cent poop emoji sticker. So thank you again for that, Dead Man. Always appreciated, but not required. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad we got a double green light again because we've had a few scripts that were passes, two of which, of course, that just didn't quite live up to the premise. This one here, I think, its concept is king and the execution was emperor, and I think it nailed it, achieved both of those, which is really great. I'm kind of surprised that it was only 22nd on the blacklist. I think this would probably be like top 15. I think so far based on what we've read. But congratulations to Matisse Haddad for writing a blacklist script within the top 25. You definitely earned that, and I enjoyed the read. So with that being said, Raoul, why don't you share with the audience where they can find you on the internets, and we will call it an evening.
Yeah, make sure to check out, I have a YouTube channel, Instagram, that kind of stuff, talk about filmmaking, everything else. I have some content planned that hopefully I can get out there soon, some more tutorial stuff, and then a couple of short films that I'm working on some ideas for. So Raoul and you and everything. So look for it and appreciate it.
Yeah, and his link is in the description below, so please feel free to check that out. For myself, I want to wish you guys all a great weekend. Again, if you are so inclined, you can sign up to the Patreon. Comes with a 1-week free trial, so you can take a look at all my posts, suggestions, lessons, and of course find out what script we will be reviewing on the Saturday show. You can also vote on that script if you greenlight or passed, and please leave a comment if you did read the script about your thoughts. We'd love to be able to talk about them on the show. With that being said, I want you guys all to have a wonderful weekend, and never forget, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.